Buckle up, guys, for Bust of the Year, the Lewis Brinson Award, and Fan of the Year. We are continuing Locked on Marlins Awards Night and finishing here with the awards. Sean, Takes, and Sam all remain, and we are finishing strong in this one on today's Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins, your daily Marlins podcast with me, Peter Pratt. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK. No TikToks, no Instas for me. I'm too old. Welcome back to the show and the award show. It is the Thursday episode of Locked on Marlins. As you can tell, we have recorded these back to back to back. Same clothes. Doesn't matter. We're still here and fighting through with these awards. And guys, and the panel, let me introduce the panel in case you haven't listened to yesterday's or the day before's episode. Sean Barrett, Kenny Takes from Made, and Sam Clark, all in the mix. Absolute stud panel, and we have been plowing through these. And it hasn't been what I would say over slander. It's been fair slander thus far. And guys, let's just get right into it. It is the Lewis Brinson Bust of the Year Award. There's one obvious name that was named 3 times in the poll, but you could look at this in a different way. So I will not lead the witnesses on this one, guys. I want to start strong on the Bust of the Year, and I will give that honor to Sam Clark.
So I guess when I was thinking about this, you gave us a little bit of a heads up, and I went to the old dome and tried to come up with a good answer, because there's one completely obvious answer, right? It's Avisail Garcia. It's supposed to be one of our big signings. I mean, maybe you could say Jorge Soler. He underproduced, but he was injured a lot. Avisail Garcia came in 20 pounds overweight, looked completely lost, grounded into, I think, 1 million double plays. It felt like never looked like his heart was in it. And so when I was trying to brainstorm for a secondary option, JJ Bleday came to mind. But I think collectively as Marlins, the last 2 years we've kind of realized that Bleday hadn't been living up to expectations in AA and AAA like we were hoping. So I think that the expectations were higher in the offseason for Avisail Garcia. I mean, we talked ourselves into Jacob Stallings. How'd that turn out? We talked ourselves into Avisail Garcia. Signing a World Series MVP is probably a bad idea if they're not a superstar. So hopefully we'll learn our lesson after that if Trent Grisham or whoever ends up shelling during the playoffs comes in front of us. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be Avi, right? Like Avi just consistently, with the exception of the Sandy Cardinals game and then his late season bomb, has been incredibly disappointing. And it's not just this year that we have to look forward to him. It's a few years in the future as well. So yeah, I'm going chalk again. I'm going Avi.
Would you have preferred 4 more years of Lewis Brinson in right field?
I mean, at least you can talk yourself into maybe he's a late bloomer, right? Like, and Sweet Lou brought a personality to the team. He's not hunched over with his fucking, excuse my language, Santa Claus belly, texting on his phone in the middle of an important moment in the locker room. Like, at least Lewis's heart was in it, and he seemed to care, and he gave us like the cigar gift. We love that. Yeah, 100%. I guess I would rather choose somebody who I can talk myself into over somebody who is supposed to be like, this is their big contract they're going to produce, and just don't. I mean, yeah, disappointing all around.
I think so. Sean Barrett, what about you on the Bust of the Year?
I mean, that's the obvious answer, isn't it? It is going to be Avi. You know, and Sam mentioned all those ground balls to third base. I mean, it was like watching a replay all year long. Every single at bat. I can't remember many at bats that wasn't the occurrence. I'm sure it wasn't actually that bad, but that's certainly how it seemed. I'm going to go a little bit off the board though, and I'm going to go completely off the field as well. And I'm going to go with Derek Jeter.
Oh yeah.
Oh baby.
Left the team, in February just before the season. Never did what he set out to do, in my opinion. Never looked like he could do the job. I think he thought he could just waltz in. I'm Derek Jeter, and everything I touch turns to gold. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So for me, I mean, you could almost blame him for Avi as well. So I think we certainly need to make sure that we remember how we ended up with the actual Bust of the Year.
Great shout, Sean. I must say, great shout. And definitely deserves a mention, Derek Jeter, no doubt. Kenny, what about you on this one?
I mean, come on now. Everyone, if you want to pause the episode real quick and go to Takes Were Made on Twitter and search Avisaíl Garcia and Takes Were Made, and you'll see all the things I've said about Avisaíl Garcia. One of the worst baseball players and one of the worst signings I've ever seen in my entire life of watching baseball. Easily the biggest bust, considering what he was paid, considering what he was expected to do with his 30 home runs. Like, it was all just, it just completely fell flat on its face. I still remember first 2 weeks of the year, people telling me, like, why are you overreacting? It's just a slow start. Here we are, game 162, still sucks, still a slow start. Jesus Christ, what an atrocious excuse for a baseball player he was. With all that being said, I once wanted Anthony Bass fired into the sun, and he came back and was like easily the most valuable baseball player on the team outside of Sandy Alcantara. Am I saying I expect Avisaíl Garcia to come back and be Albert Pujols? Absolutely not. But at this point, maybe my puny little brain can't comprehend what he's capable of. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Kim Ang is right. I will say right here that I doubt it, and I think Avisaíl Garcia is going to come back next year and hit a whopping 235.
Stunner.
Easily, the bust of the year is Avisaíl Garcia. But before I give it back to you, Pete, so you can steer us in the right direction, Jacob Stallings should have to give Avisaíl Garcia like $1 million from his contract for how much attention he took off of the fact that he was also garbage, because Jacob Stallings was also very, very, very bad, and not just hitting on every aspect. He couldn't throw runners out. He frames like, oh my God. Like, I think my nephew's 9, and I think he could frame better than him. Just the fact that this award doesn't go to one of the worst catchers I've ever seen in my life because of one of the worst outfielders I've ever seen in my life. Like, Jacob Stallings should be texting him every night and be like, dude, thank you for sucking so much because people are not giving me the bust of the year award.
Stallings ran like the mafia knocked his knees after he left the box every time. It was the most painful thing to watch in the entire world.
Just horrendous.
He made me look like a track
that
star.
Dude run is literally, it's one of those moments where, like, you can go up to a kid who's a little overweight and doesn't think he can be a good baseball player in the future, and you'd be like, son, look at this guy. You don't think you can be a professional baseball player? Just look at this weirdo and how slow he is and how bad he is at everything, but yet he's still here making millions of dollars, son. You can do it. So never give up on your dreams, guys, because Jacob Stallings is a major leaguer.
I'm just thinking ahead now, guys, to be honest with you. I'm thinking this moment a year in advance, we come back and Avisaíl Garcia has had his first ever 30 home run season. I can
crown,
see
man.
it in the stars. I can just see it happening. It would just be the most monumental of bounce backs all time. If Avi, actually, Kim, she was just a prophet. She could see in the future. She knew it. And
what's going to happen if the first 2 weeks of next season he's hitting like 350, 400? Like really just lighten it up. Like
sell high, baby. Sell high.
Yeah, get someone on the phone immediately.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting thing to track next year. The fact that he lost all the timber right at the end of the year, I think, was very intriguing. How he was allowed to continue in that path. But bust of the year, an obvious one, guys. Let's flex into another one that I like, but this can be taken a few ways. It's Iron Man of the Year. So obviously, just to kind of cap up that one, by the way, Avisaíl Garcia is the bust of the year and takes that award. Insert applause sound effects here. Iron Man of the Year. There's 4 I put down. There may be others. Jazz, playing 60-odd games at all-star level and voted into the all-star game with a torn knee and a half-broken back. Miggy, for playing pretty much every day, but smashing his face into someone's helmet, his teeth flying out, and being reinserted and then back next day with his teeth looking pearly white. So, dentist did a good job. Sandy, 228 innings. And maybe more surprising, the most surprising, Pablo Lopez, 32 starts in a year. Pablito! Absolutely stunning. There's others maybe in there, but The Marlins, they've got some Iron Men. They really have. These boys have fought through the pain barrier to deliver 69 wins. Nice. Sean, where are you leaning on Iron Man of the Year?
I'm going to go, well, I'm not off board because he was on the board, but I'm going to go Miggy just because he's the only qualified hitter for the Marlins. He's the only guy to get to over 500 at-bats.
Okay.
And in
Default then is by default.
Yeah, if we call the Sherman era, he leads a team in plate appearances, in hits, in doubles. He's been one of those mainstays, and the reason why I want to mention him is just in case that's the last we see of him. So, he's had his struggles, and we've all, we've sat on him a little bit as well, on the field and off the field. But he turned up every day, played baseball, defensively, an absolute wizard. And the bat for periods of time over the season weren't quite as bad as maybe some people were leading it to be. So for me, he is definitely the Iron Man. I think you could definitely give it to Sandy and Pablo as well. But for me, it's Miggy.
Okay. Kenny, how do you feel about Miguel Rojas at the moment?
Man, I don't like him, right? I don't. I don't want him on the team anymore. I don't think he's like a serviceable Major League Baseball player. I think he's getting older. I think he's a great guy, right? You see him at the end of the year giving out bats to kids. Like, he's not as like a horrible human being. He's not. He's a good person. I just think his time here has run its course. I think he's not like a great leader of this team. I think he spends way too much time looking for what people will talk about him. And if you're going to be a 34, 35-year-old captain of a baseball team, and you have a team full of young guys looking for some sort of mentoring, and you're on Twitter, like, searching your name for what people say about you and blocking people who are very inconsequential, I'm sorry. Like, I just find that it's not a good look. That's all it is. I try not to, like, even talk about him anymore, try not to address it anymore, because, like, it's just so exhausting at this point. No, nothing. Please, like, I don't mind. Like, when you ask me, I don't mind talking about it, right? But as far as Twitter goes, a lot of it gets, like, you can only say so much on Twitter, and someone's going to take it out of context, or someone's going to take it a different way. At least when people listen to this, they'll be able to hear me saying what I, like, truly feel. Again, great guy. As far as him being on this team, I've seen enough. And it's not just him; it's a lot of people on this team, right? Like, I know it may seem like the question was about Miguel Rojas, but I can say that about like 30 different people on this team that I've seen enough of. As far as the award, Iron Man award, it's, again, kind of similar how I don't mess around with Tommy Hutton. I'm not going to mess around with Sandy. It's Sandy, because Sandy's doing stuff that, like I said, right, we've seen it, how pitchers are very treated with these very kid gloves. Like, how can we keep this person healthy for so long? And then Sandy's just like the Kool-Aid man, just bursting through the wall. And he's like, oh, give me 9 more innings. Give me 9 more innings. And he's just, every time he goes out, he's like, I want to throw 140. And he does it and stays healthy. And then the season ends and he's snorting it. And he's just like, give me the World Baseball Classic. Like, he's just ready. He just wants to continue pitching deep into the games. Like, that's all he wants to do. Like, and at a position where it's like a blister keeps you out 2 weeks. And this guy was just like, I don't know what he's made of. The guy's like,
he's never had a blister.
I don't know what he is, Pete. I don't think he's human. He's like a redwood tree in like California. Like, he's just towering over everyone. He's just this huge beast. And he's like, oh, coach, 3 days rest. Okay, 104 miles per hour. Here I come. Like, he's just, it's unheard of what he's doing. It really is. Like, it's when you look at pitchers around the league, and like DeGrom and how often he gets hurt. Scherzer misses time. Pitchers miss time. And he's doing something that is completely out of the norm. Like, it's unheard of. You don't see guys do this. You don't. And then, first off, it's very rare to see pitchers pitch 32 games a year, like every year. And then it's very rare to see him do it while pitching 220 plus innings, like on a team that sucks. Like, he's doing something that you really just don't see. So he's easily my Iron Man of the year. Shout out Sandy. Love that guy.
Shout out, Sandy, indeed. Before I let Sam go, I will slightly steer the witness here, because the Twitter polls are in, and it is landslide season on the Twitter polls. Sandy, 228 innings, 83% of the vote.
Oh, my God.
Miggy with his teeth, 4%. And Pablo, 32 starts. I think this is unfair. 3% with Pablo for 32 starts. For me, that was one of my it's one of my favorite elements of this year that Pablo's had a full workload for the first ever time. But Sam, I won't steal your thunder anymore. Iron Man of the year for you.
It's Sandy. He has 23 more innings than any other starting pitcher in baseball. He was the Iron Horse from a pitching perspective, from a team perspective. And an underrated part about this idea of thinking of him in the context of what an Iron Horse is that one of the most fun parts about watching Sandy, and he doesn't do it every time, but when he starts to bring the velocity up as it gets later in the games, he starts out throwing 98 and he's throwing 100 in like the 7th and 8th inning. It's a remarkable thing to see. Sandy, absolutely. Shout out to also though the Jazz and playing through all these injuries. It really goes to show that like it's easy for me to like have a beer and tweet out this nonsense about these players, but then when you get the context of all of the things that they're really going through and all of the injuries, a torn meniscus would take me out. I wouldn't be able to go to my desk job. So like the idea that he's stealing bases and cranking homers with a torn meniscus is just a foreign concept. They're all aliens. They're all incredibly impressive. But yeah, it's Sandy. It's just when you think workhorse, if you asked any baseball fan that follows like both the National and American League who the workhorse was of the season, I'd be shocked if it wasn't predominantly Sandy answers.
100%. Yeah. This is
also,
Sandy's award.
Pete, like you said, shout out to Pablo because I was one of those guys where after they didn't trade him at the deadline, I was like, this is such a risky move for a guy who's never finished a season in his career. Like this could backfire on us very big if it ends up being an injury that keeps him out going into next year. And he shut me up. He proved everyone wrong, and he pitched in 32 games for the first time in his career. So shout out to Pablo.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great point. It's a great kind of storyline for us heading into the offseason as we kind of get away from these awards. But that season for Pablo and the approach the Marlins took where they decided to sit on their hands effectively and not pull the trigger on a deal, that seems like it's actually paid off. If Pablo would have got hurt again, then, again, we'd have been questioning that decision at that moment in time. But Sandy is the Iron Man. But it's time for our first ad. And the Iron Men of menswear are back in town, guys. It is our good friends over at Roan. Yes, sir. And the dress shirt was due for a radical reinvention, and Roan stepped up to the challenge big time. Their commuter shirt is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man. And here's why. It's a big claim, but I like it. Mobility. That's the first thing. Roan's comfortable four-way stretch fabric provides breathability, flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. I'm more of a 36-hole kind of guy. I like to double down. And it's time to feel confident with a wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. With Roan's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. Yes, sir. The commuter shirt can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/lockedon and use promo code lockedon to save 20% off your entire order. That is 20% off your order. You can head to roan.com/lockedon. Roan is spelled R-H-O-N-E, just in case you didn't know. Roan.com/lockedon. Use promo code lockedon. It's time to find your corner office comfort.
If Roan's offering mobility, can we get 100 shirts to Jacob Stallings tomorrow, please?
Let's get some over to Jacob Stallings. Jakey, if you're listening, send me your address, mate. I will personally send you 10. No problem. I will use the promo code. So Stallings, let's get the mobility up. Let's get the wrinkles sorted. We got you covered, brother. All right, guys. Final segment. It's been a stunning 3 days of episodes. And there's two final categories left. And we have, first off, the trade of the year. Trade of the year, I'm going to preface this with, I think Kim Ang can actually swing a good deal. When she pulls the trigger on deals, I've liked what she's done. So I'm going to have to call that out. And I'm extremely interested to see what the offseason brings, because this offseason needs a lot of trades. So many trades, it's going to be ridiculous. So, the shortlist for trade of the year. Stallings. Maybe not the right time to bring that one up. Stallings for Scott. Not much love for that one. Wendell for Meisner. Groshans for Bass and Pop. Scott and Salsa for effectively a comp B pick. Those are the 4 that I've put forward. There may have been other ones. There probably was. But Stallings for Scott. Reminder, Tanner Scott was... Tanner Scott? Who am I thinking of? Connor Scott. Connor Scott was a first-round pick. First-round pick. So binned off for Stallings there. So Stallings for Scott. Wendell, Meisner, Groshans, Bass and Pop, Scott and Salsa for effectively a comp B pick. Kenny, this one's you, brother. Trade of the year.
Oh God. I'll say Bass for Groshans, because again, the way I kind of think of these awards is my expectation before the year and then how it ends up turning out. And there's kind of like the Braxton Garrett most improved thing. I was so down on him that I was not expecting what I saw from him. And it's kind of, again, this is a more of a GM award, right? Like, we're trying to give credit to Kim Ang here. But I think a lot of the reason why this trade was ever able to happen was because Anthony Bass had one of the crazier bounce backs ever. When you look at his career numbers, he was never this good. To have the best year of your career at your age 34, age 35 season is not normal. And we were able to flip that into a potential, starting third baseman. I'm not as high on Groshans as a lot of people are, but I still do think that when you consider the fact that you were able to flip Anthony Bass for a top 100 prospect, that's a really, really good trade. And it comes, again, from a management perspective of putting Bass in positions to succeed. You saw them kind of stop messing around with, like, hey, maybe give him a shot as a closer, because if they would have done that for an extended period of time, who knows if his numbers would have just imploded, and then there goes that trade. So it came from a spot of one of the few things they managed well was Bass, and putting him in these good positions to succeed in the 7th, 8th inning. His numbers were crazy good. Obviously, we saw how it turned out in Toronto, but flipping him for Groshans was a fantastic, fantastic trade. A really, really easily, to me, the best trade they made.
No doubt. I'm completely with you. And you're right. The Bass turnaround drove this trade, and the Bass turnaround happened because of him, but also the fact they didn't mess with the role. Fixed him in the role, found his role, he excelled. Too many players this year, the Marlins messed with their role, tried to squeeze them into a role. That isn't just a bullpen. It's offensive dudes too. Round pegs, square holes, or whatever the saying is. There's so much of that, and the guys could not excel. Bassman, 7th inning. Yes, sir, locked it down. Groshans is back. We'll see what Groshans can do. I think he's going to have every opportunity, I think, to start at third base. We'll wait and see how that plays out. Sam, what about for you on this one? Trade of the year. Is it Jacob Stallings for you?
It's it's Jacob Stallings. My new best friend, Jacob Stallings. Yeah. It's got to be Groshans. Yeah. I mean, Takes had 2 really good points there that I kind of want to highlight. Not only the first one, that the Marlins put a potential trade piece in a position to succeed, to increase their value and see what they could get back. They did a good job of it. I mean, we've, especially this episode in particular, I've done a lot of hammering on the bad things that the Marlins did this past offseason and this year as a whole. So it is important to maintain any sort of optimism and kind of build up confidence in the good things they did. I mean, is the Jacob Stallings trade bad because Jacob Stallings is bad? Yes, but also we sold high on Zach Thompson. It's not like he had a good year in Pittsburgh at all. I think he had like an over 5 ERA, and he wouldn't have had a spot in this rotation. He would have just been rotting away in the minors. So from an expectations perspective, yes, the Jacob Stallings trade was a disappointment. But we were all hype on it going into the year. We were all expecting to get this Gold Glove level defense. And the one thing Stallings did do well is catch every Sandy game. And I don't know, I don't know how much of a real effect that has. But if we were to put a check in the positive corner for Jacob Stallings, it is his ability to catch Sandy and work with him through those games and be just kind of the veteran catching presence that it felt like he needed. But yeah, it's Groshans. I mean, I'm not completely sold on him either. I mean, like a contact hitter over in a corner spot is not always the best thing or something that you want. But and he hasn't been phenomenal defensively. I think he's probably been right around average at best. But he's young. We'll give him a shot. Anytime you can get a reliever for a top 100 prospect, you do it. So I think with the context of that, you got to go Groshans.
Shawnee Barrett, where do you sit on this one?
It's a sweep in my mind. It's a Groshans trade. For all the reasons the guys have said. I mean, I'm a bit higher on Stallings than maybe the other two. I think his second half is significantly better.
That's not hard, by the way.
Yeah, if we can get 2 times at half, I think that would be a far better season and something that we can actually play with and not be too disappointed in. The defense, yeah, we were expecting Gold Glove, weren't we? And we've not quite seen that. It's significantly better than what we've got in previous years, but that's not saying much either. Groshans is, for me, yeah, it is that idea of Bass, a guy that we were all shipped off right now, this time last year, we would have all shipped him off for nothing. We would have shipped him off for the salary relief, a bucket of balls. Yep. As it is, the Marlins not only do get a 100 ranked prospect, they also get some money relief in my eyes, because Groshans will be the starting third baseman and BA and his big number in arbitration will be gone. So that money can be used elsewhere. So for me, it was a win-win trade.
Putting it into context, guys, right now, in the modern day era, let's say 1 year on, this is effectively like trading Richard Blyer for a top 100 prospect. Like, we're in that spot right now where a year of control or whatever, and, on a down year, somehow you turn that into a top 100 prospect. Like, Bass pitched well, the Marlins put him in the spot, and they capitalized on that. He went to the postseason with the Blue Jays and ended up costing them because, he ended up with 0 outs and 3 earned runs and no Twitter account. So that's tough to see for the Bass man. I hope he does come back to Twitter because he's a likable character. But nevertheless, the Marlins sold high, got their dude. So you guys have gone for the sweep, and that includes Twitter. Twitter also had this one as 44%, the winner. My favorite, actually, was the least voted for, 6%. For Tanner Scott, Cole Salsa. I actually think for that Comp B pick and a few other random dudes, I think there's something there with Tanner Scott. I do think that we'll end up finding something there, and that will end up being the better of all of them trades in some sort of way. I don't know. I think if he can stop throwing 150 sliders in a row, mixing it up slightly, his stuff will play. He can be a top reliever. I'm confident of that. Less walks, more guesswork for the hitters. I think Scott can end up being something. For effectively, they gave away a draft pick and a few duds. Okay, final one, guys. It's the Fan of the Year vote. Fan of the Year. It was impossible to put a Twitter poll up that accurately captured all of the Marlins Twitter studs. Listen, Marlins Twitter, it's relatively small, but well-formed is how I would describe it. It's a beautiful beast. I put up a few nominations, but guys, I will give you your chance to put forward your names. Loud Marlins fan was in the mix. The Smooth Jazz Chisholm Lounge was in the mix. Ron Cox in the mix. Who else did I have in there as well? I can't even remember. It was too many.
Marlins Maniac.
Marlins Maniac. Kim Ang's burner, basically. So, okay. Let's finish strong. Sean Barrett, I will hand this one to you. Fan of the Year, Marlins Twitter Fan of the Year.
I'm not saying this just because he's in this Zoom call, but one of the people that I like to interact with as far as his content and the person that makes me smile the most is Takes. I think the job you do on the baseball side is amazing. I have to say I'm going to take you off notifications soon because there's just too much NFL, and it's an absolute tire fire at the moment. So I might have to take you off notifications. I want to give an honourable mention though, because there's some older gentleman that sits in, I think it's zone 21 or 22 in the stadium, and you can see him when the camera pans that way on the batter, and he has been there for multiple games. For multiple years. He's always there. And every time I see him on the broadcast, I raise my glass to him every time because he's always there and he must love the baseball. And it's good to see that there are a few loyal fans in Miami.
That's a great way. That's a great way of doing it, mate. To be honest, I do the same whenever I see an empty seat. I raise a glass and boy, oh boy, I have been boozed this year. It's been boozing. Sam, what about you on this one, mate? Fan of the year. Nice words as well, Sean.
I'm going to follow Sean. Takes, shout out to Takes, phenomenal Marlins presence. Shout out to Peter, phenomenal Marlins presence. Two of the best in this call right now. For me, this is a no-brainer as far as who's brought me the most entertainment value, and the guy I will send tweets to, friends that don't follow the Marlins from his account. It's Loud Marlins fan, man. This guy has been on a roll all season. I mean, even in the last week, he went to the final game of the season, got Don Mattingly to sign the ball, and then tried to sell it on Twitter 3 days later. What an iconic thing to do. He was sitting behind home plate with Marlins man there for a second. He's trying to sell Monte Harrison framed jerseys for like prime dollar. Him and Craig Mish got a thing going on. I mean, there was the personal life stuff where he just disappeared for a while and then came back. The amount of hats that this man has. This guy has more specific Loud Marlins fans hats than I have hats combined. Always around, banging pots and pans. I don't know how he hasn't got anger, like HOA letters just constantly from all the noise he's making. This guy's a legend for me. Watches every game, cares the most. Is a Hurricanes fan, which sucks, but outside of that, he's my fan of the year.
I'm going to clip that whole segment and put that out on Twitter. That is just so good. So good. Takes, what have you got for us? Fan of the year?
I mean, first of all, Sean, Sam, thank you guys. Really, like I do appreciate that. Like the whole purpose of when I created the Takes for Made account and all that wasn't to be like, a lot of guys want to get into some sort of journalism or something to get in with the team and learn players. But all I've ever wanted is to like be loved by like other fans, like to be able to speak for them, to be able to entertain them. Like at the end of the day, I said it on the last time I was on here, Pete. Players come and go, coaches come and go, general managers come and go, owners come and go, stadiums come and go, teams come and go, but the fans are like always there. Like the same people I've been bantering on Twitter with for the past 3-4 years, they're still here. You know what I mean? And my goal is always really to entertain them. And sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. So like that's all I've ever really wanted to do. Whenever I launch my own podcast, that'll be the purpose of it, to like speak from the heart about my fandom and to entertain other fans that are just like me. Like I'm no different really than anyone else. So thank you guys really, really, really from the bottom of my heart. I do appreciate that a lot.
Just to interject slightly.
Yeah,
there is a gap in the market, by the way. There is a gap in the podcast market that needs filling. And I feel like you could be the right man to fill that gap.
I think it's time I finally get off my ass and throw my hat in the ring and do something that's very simple as talking into a mic once in a week. I can't do what you do with it once a day. But especially about this team. But you know,
shout out to Peter for that alone.
I'll say, yeah, Peter, like that's kind of like a good segue into this, right? I can't give an award to a single Marlins fan. What I can do is just shout out off the top of my head the people that like make Marlins seasons bearable, make them entertaining, because like it's not an entertaining product by any means. But yet somehow I watch it and find myself entertained when I'm like, nothing is like more fun than watching my team stink, but then seeing the jokes that like other Marlins fans are cracking on Twitter, like it makes it enjoyable. And you know, that's you, everyone in this call, Pete, doing a podcast every single day about this team. You know, if that's like a form of Japanese torture, but you make it fun. Like you really make this like it's such a great show. You make it like something. Being as a kid growing up, I always wanted, no matter how bad the team was, I always wanted to hear about the Marlins. And, you know, Marlins in local radio in Miami, nobody talks about the Marlins. Like you turn on the radio and they're talking about the Heat, or they're talking about the Dolphins. That's what consumes this town. So being able to have a podcast that you can tune into every single day and hear like from a Marlins fan, whether it's negative, positive, whatever it is, like Pete, what you do is like fantastic. So shout outs to you, Sam, NL Feast. Beautiful. Sean, diehard Marlins fan. Great perspective that he provides. Like, I will tweet the most overreactive shit. Sorry, and Sam and Sean will come in and he's like, "Man, let's calm down." And I'm like, Sean's always there to keep me level-headed. Like me, the most overreactive person in the world, and Sean's always there to be like, "You sure you mean that?" And I'm like, "No, I don't, Sean. Thank you, though." So Sean, I mean, off the top of my head, Alex. You know, one of my best friends on Marlins Twitter. I love him to death. High sports guy he's rebranded to Nick Fortes fan club. Yeah. Love him. Mario, love him. Fish Stripes, every one of them. Great content they put out. Like there's so many in such, like you said, Pete, such a small fan base. right? We are. There's no, you don't have to hide it. But so many really, 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 really cool people in there that I like. I do get excited for Marlins seasons, even though I don't think the team's ever going to be great when I get into them. I'm still like looking forward to baseball seasons because I get to talk to the people I consider friends, you know, and I've gotten to meet some of these people in real life, and they're always just as cool as I expect them to be. So I can't give the award to any singular person. I'm sorry, I just can't do it because there's so many cool people. But if I for the sake of leaning one, Pete, you got a special place in my heart.
Shout out, Pete.
Sir. Yes, sir. You know what podcast he's on. Well played. Well played. Listen, here's how the fans voted. They had Loud Marlins fan as the champ and the king, and I must say, shout out to Chase. He has a unique style. I'll put it that way. A unique style that he loves this team. He's a fan at the end of the day, and he loves this team, and he wants the team to do well.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day, the team needs more diehard fans like him, right? Like
exactly.
100%.
You would never turn that down.
No, we just need diehards, and that's the beauty of it. And it's almost impossible to pick a fan of the year. Loud Marlins fan has had a wild year, I would say, and that is true. And like you said, there's some highlights there. The Monte Harrison jersey.
$300 is a steal, Peter. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, I guess so. You know, the Don Mattingly baseball for sale 2 days. You know, fair play. I shouted out. What a fun guy. He's been on the pod many times, and you know, I do appreciate him as well. I'm going to give my fan of the year actually to Sean Barrett. So there's been a lot of in love here. There's a lot of incest in this podcast here today, but it has to be said. Sean Barrett, I want to shout you out, brother. I don't know how many episodes, let's call it 95, you've been on this year on Locked On, mate. You have been there with me. We went through the trade series in the lockout. You were podcasting with me in a lockout. You didn't have to, but you were there with me rattling through trade propositions with the bloody Seattle Mariners and the Marlins. It's never going to happen. Who cares? You were in there. You've been there every week through thick and thin, probably done multiple episodes a week, multiple times. So Sean Barrett, you are my fan of the year. I think in reality, it's as good as a way to end it, guys, because it's been a wild year for the Marlins, a disappointing one overall. The emojis, I think, summed it up on Tuesday's episode. So if you guys haven't listened to that episode, go all the way back, get the emojis. It's been a disappointing one, but what I will say, guys, there is going to be a lot of stories written this offseason. A lot. There is so much that just has to happen because there's no front office. There's no coaches. There's no manager. There's no players. So the Marlins somehow have to fill those holes. So there is going to be a lot of action. And luckily, guys, there's a daily Marlins podcast to keep you updated. Fish Stripes. And Locked On Marlins, of course. Right, boys, that is going to wrap us up. That has been a stunning 3-part series of awards night with a few ads sprinkled in there. My special thanks, Sean Barrett, Sam Clark, Takes Were Made, all for joining me for this one. Hope you've enjoyed it, guys. Any final words from anyone before we roll? If not, then I will roll the final credits, which are basically me hitting the end recording button.
I'm waiting for the moment, Peter, in like deep January where you're just going full Shining mode and typing the same sentence out over on Twitter over and over again from having to do a daily Marlins podcast in January. But no, thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate it. Excited to see what happens next year.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Thanks to the absolutely stunning panel. And we will be back. Well, guess what? Tomorrow, Friday. It is the Friday episode tomorrow. And it's just me, a solo pod on a Friday, probably recapping some of this and also recapping what the postseason has done. We've recorded these all throughout Tuesday. What day is it? Tuesday. We've recorded these all through Tuesday. I am sitting here praying for a Julio Urias blow up. I hope he gets completely smashed up and absolutely decimated. But it is the Thursday episode, but I have no idea what's happened on Tuesday yet. So I'll be recapping that on Friday. In the meantime, enjoy this episode. Enjoy awards. I'll be back tomorrow.